The steady beeping of a heart monitor gets old fast. Sure, it's a sign you're alive, but it also means you're stuck, hooked up to machines, and I needed to get out of there. I hadn't been awake long when a group of doctors filed in for morning rounds. One of them began listing my injuries out loud. I didn't understand half of the medical terms, but their widened eyes told me enough. I was lucky to be alive. Trailing behind them was a nurse in blue scrubs. She waited patiently for the doctors to leave before stepping up to my bedside. She was blonde, young around my age, maybe 19, and her name tag read LPN, Darla Connor. Good morning, Martin. It's good to see you awake. How are you feeling? I tried to sit up, but stopped, wincing before my head even left the pillow. Chest hurts, I rasped. My voice didn't even sound like mine. She gave a sympathetic smile, carefully holding a straw to my lips so I could sip some ice water. It helped ease the roughness in my throat, but swallowing still felt like swallowing nails. That's normal with cracked ribs, she said, tapping the cast on my left arm gently. We can keep your arm still, but not your chest. Breathing's going to be rough for a while. I just stared at her, the pain meds fogging my thoughts. Words were slow to come. How long? I asked, trying to keep calm. How long have you been here? She clarified. I nodded faintly. It's your third day in the hospital. First morning on this floor. You were in surgery, then intensive care. It was touch and go for a bit. You took quite a beating. 3 days. That hit hard. Is my sister here? Her brows lifted for a second, then she shook her head. No visitors on this floor yet. She might have seen you in intensive care. Visiting hours are short there. I tried to sit up again, but she quickly stopped me. Hey, lie back, she said firmly. Take it easy. Can you find out if she's here? I asked anxiously as she grasped my shoulders and gently, but firmly pushed me back down. Does she know I've been moved? Can you find out? I'll call down there and see, okay? And don't go making any more sudden moves like that without my help. There's a lot of stuff knitting back together inside you that you don't want to mess up, all right? I nodded weakly again as she stared down at me reproachfully. Eventually her expression softened just a little. Now, if you feel up to it, there's a policeman that wants to talk to you, to take your statement about what happened. Could he check on Sienna for me? I don't know, Martin, she said patiently. It can't hurt to ask him though. I tried and mostly failed to smile. It can't hurt any worse, that's for sure. She smiled briefly. All right, I'll see if he's still in the building. If I can catch him, I'll let him know you're awake. You stay still now, she said, shaking a finger at me for emphasis as she went out the door. I lay there feeling helpless, trying not to panic. This was the second time in a month I'd been knocked down trying to protect my sister. I was in a lot of pain, but I'd still take a beating any day over the emotional torment I went through the last time. I couldn't stop the damning thought from infiltrating my mind. You failed her again. Sometimes I wondered why Sienna's happiness was so important to me. To distract myself, I looked around, trying not to move my head too much. Standard hospital light green walls, an ancient television hanging from the ceiling, a tray on wheels to put meals on. Outside my door, a procession of damaged people was passing by. They looked to be patients circling the floor, rehabilitating from a variety of injuries. Some struggled by with crutches or walkers, determined to go it alone, while others were carefully shepherded by quietly encouraging hospital staff. The room must have been high up. The view out the window was of an anonymous rumpled fabric of gray clouds, as if my bed was slung closely underneath the folds of a giant brain. I could have been in Tibet or on the moon for all that showed me. Nurse Connor returned in only a few minutes, leading in a man wearing the blue uniform of the Syracuse Police Department. So much for Tibet. I looked up at him in surprise. I'd met him before. Hi, Martin, he said softly. Hi. Officer McConnell, I managed to get out. Call me Kevin, Martin. You know, we've got to stop meeting in hospitals, he observed, smiling sympathetically. I tried to keep his ruddy Irish face in focus, but seeing him was launching painful memories. They were erupting like rockets from the top of my spine, exploding just behind my forehead. Darla tells me you were asking about your sister. Sienna, right? I nodded as best I could. It was weird. My face seemed to be tingling. When was the last time you saw her? 3 days ago, downtown. I was barely able to get out the word downtown. It sounded oddly garbled, like I had a mouth full of marbles. Was that where you were assaulted? Before I could answer, Nurse Darla drifted back into my field of vision, cutting off the cop by moving directly in front of him. Her hazel eyes were boring into mine. I was trying to stare back, but my eyes seemed to be blinking a lot. Martin, are you okay? She demanded in a no-nonsense tone. Her face appeared to be expanding and contracting, like an inflating balloon resisting the unsteady breath of an asthmatic old man. She continued talking, but I was having trouble making out the words. I'm pretty sure she was saying my name over and over again. Some sort of harsh buzzer came on, and I was vaguely aware of a lot of activity surging around me. The sound of her voice continued to fade as I fell away into a well of darkness, leaving her calling to me from the surface, until I fell out of sight. I am my sister's keeper. I didn't volunteer for the job, but I promised Mom I'd look after Sienna, so I do what I have to keep her safe. I do what's necessary. I love her. I can jog home from NSCC in half an hour. That's North Syracuse Community College. Not exactly Ivy League, I know. There's a shoe box in my closet full of letters from other schools, mostly from ones I hadn't even applied to. Northwestern, Columbia, Penn. Most came with scholarship offers from their math departments. I'm kind of a freak at math, but those schools would have taken me away from Sienna. I scheduled my classes so I could be out by noon. I wanted to take mostly math and computer science classes, but to be out early, I wound up with a pretty weird mixture of classes that were available earlier in the day. Real estate, nursing. I didn't really know what the hell kind of degree I'd wind up with someday, but that didn't really matter to me. Not the way my sister matters. If I jogged the whole way home from NSCC, I could be waiting at the curb as the mailman drove up in front of our little house in his rotting Jeep with the steering wheel on the wrong side. When I run like that in the summer, the sweat drips off me. But this was winter. A deep inhalation of frigid air felt like 1,000 tiny daggers flying into my lungs. A gasping exhale breath would spout a huge cloud of steam into the air. I'd futilely flap my arms for warmth while eyeing the cancerous orange rust reaching inexorably up the Jeep's sides and into its guts. The mailman probably didn't give a rip about the rust. The sooner the engine fell out, the sooner he'd get a newer rig with a newer heater. You need a good heater to survive driving around Syracuse in winter while the salt dumped on the roads relentlessly chews away at the metal around you. He always ignored me standing there, putting the mail in the corroded old mailbox instead of just handing it to me. Sometimes he'd linger to light a cigarette with the Jeep blocking my access to the box, reveling in his power over me. As if delaying me a whole minute from retrieving a batch of bills was a big freaking hardship. When he's had enough mental fantasy time, he'd lurch the Jeep away and off down the street, spinning his tires to throw dirty snow at me. I guess you get your jollies wherever you can find them. He never gave a damn why. Starting a month ago, I'd begun to be there every day when he arrived. Or why my guts churned when I thought I might be late. When I turned from the mailbox, I could usually see Sienna looking out the window at me, her jet black hair framing her face. I'd give her a smile and a wave. When I opened the front door, she always greeted me with her beautiful but precarious smile, murmuring her thanks for my coming back to her. Before I understood the danger, she would get the mail from the box every day and have it waiting on my desk when I got home. It was on Mom's birthday a month ago that I came home a little later than usual. There wasn't any mail in the box, and Sienna wasn't watching for me in the window. I found the mail, a bunch of bills, all opened and scattered over the top of the desk. It was my only clue as to why when I opened the front door, she was gone. These days, we call people mentally ill instead of other less charitable labels. Some forms of mental illness appear to run in families, a plague randomly passed down from one generation to the next. Most of the downstream kids are lucky. A few are not. Ours was such a family, and our mom was touched by the family curse. By the time her husband figured out she wasn't just becoming an eccentric artist, my big sister and I had already joined the family tree. The prospect of caring for our mom, while waiting years to see if their kids had it too. Well, he left. Sienna and I never knew our father. Mom always said we were better off for it. He still sent us money regularly, but he never made contact or came to see if my sister and I were okay living with our mom, or how his former bride was faring. If he'd stayed in touch, he would have known that on a cold and rainy night a year ago, a month after my 18th birthday, Mom's Cadillac had run into a freeway bridge support, less than a mile away from home. Officer McConnell had been the policeman that met me at the hospital. He told me privately that the car must have been going around 100 miles per hour, and that there weren't any braking skid marks on the road leading to the concrete pillar the car was wrapped around. After he'd told me my mom was dead, I cried on the cop's starched blue shirt as he held me up outside the emergency room doors. In the months that followed Mom's death, I was oddly troubled by my memory of my meeting with the cop, something beyond the trauma of our loss. I eventually concluded it seemed odd because it was the first time anyone resembling a father figure had comforted me. I didn't appreciate the significance at the time, but after the cop learned that there was no father and that Sienna and I were now on our own, he put it down as an accident in his report. I don't know if hearing about Mom's death would have made a difference in the checks our real dad sent. I sure wasn't going to tell the scumsucker. In the month before she left us, Mom changed all the bank accounts and other things to joint ownership, with my name in place alongside her own. She bought a life insurance policy too, with just me as the beneficiary. It scared the hell out of me when she did those things. I was 18, not exactly ready for the responsibility I was seemingly being groomed to somehow take on. I could tell that by having just my name on the insurance policy and all the other things, and not my sister's name too. Mom expected me to take care of Sienna. Officer McConnell's accident finding made it possible for me to collect the money from Mom's life insurance policy. I used it to bury her and pay off the mortgage and credit cards. That left the monthly bills, stuff like property taxes, insurance, utilities, clothes, food. I forged Mom's signature and deposited the checks that came from our scumsucker dad by mail, then wrote checks or withdrew money from the joint account in my own name to pay the bills. It paid nearly all of them. We were able to do the rest with money from our part-time jobs. I did math tutoring for kids referred to me by the local high schools and community college, and a couple times a week I filed returned books at the library after it closed down for the night. Math geeks love the Dewey Decimal System, I guess, and Ms. Walker, the head librarian, was a nice lady. She would stop and ask how I was doing, and always waited for me to finish before she left for the night. Even though Sienna didn't finish high school, she surprised me with her talents when it came to computers. Kind of like me with math, I guess it was hard to say how or why it was second nature to me. I must not have been paying attention before Mom's death for it to be so unexpected. She could scan the most arcane product support manual on Earth and somehow managed to retrieve the tiny bit of information needed to solve a problem. One of the local PC support companies hired her as an escalation resource for when their staff couldn't figure out a customer's problem. They didn't call that often, but she still got paid each month for making herself available. So she seldom had cause to leave the house on her own, and the $1,000 she put into the bank every month really helped. In the aftermath of Mom's death, I used the quiet time at the library to study what had afflicted her. I read a lot of psychiatry books, hoping to learn what symptoms to watch for in Sienna and prevent it from progressing within her untreated, as it must have inside Mom. Psychosis in Stedman's Medical Dictionary is defined as a severe mental disorder, with or without organic damage, characterized by derangement of personality and loss of contact with reality and causing deterioration of normal social functioning. The problem with a definition like that is you don't know what normal social functioning is when you're still a kid. For a long time, I didn't know it was unusual for a mom to do things like write a play about girls at department stores offering fragrance samples, but were really aliens spraying us with chemical agents to steal our minds. Sienna and I used to perform her plays on a homemade stage in our basement, to an audience consisting of our mother and Ingrid, our confused wiener dog. I would always play the villain of the day, which could be anything from a cosmetic salesman to a CIA agent from Area 51. Sienna was always the heroine that miraculously saved the world against all odds. A trauma center nurse, a Navy SEAL, the sexy owner of a pharmaceutical company that makes vaccines, all sorts of things. Mom would watch our performances with anxious pride, praising us enthusiastically after the curtain came down. Later she would take the script and a red pen to her bedroom. Sometimes she would emerge ecstatic about her revisions. Other times we could hear her weeping through the locked door, and she would apologize for several days afterwards about the screenplay that hadn't been good enough for her children to perform. As I grew up and began to hang out with friends from school, I came to realize how different my home life was compared to other kids. I began gradually opting out of Mom's inspired projects. I believe Mom let that happen because she still had Sienna. She and Mom were more like best friends than mother and daughter, and Sienna was always willing to go on new adventures with her. We didn't talk about it at the time, but I suspected she did that partly out of love and partly to ensure Mom didn't do anything to hurt herself. That was the main reason Sienna didn't graduate from high school. Mom asked her to stay home too much, or took her on road trips to Star Trek conventions and other gatherings of the weird and the wacky. They would drive off and be gone on an adventure for days, pulling off the road to sleep in the car along the way. They could do that because Mom's car had been a truly gargantuan old Cadillac. It was big enough that she could bundle Sienna in a sleeping bag on the backbench seat, and at 5'4", she wouldn't touch the sides with her head or her feet. It was so ridiculously big that while other kids played camp-out in tents set up in their backyards, Sienna and I played camp-out in that huge old beast of a car. While they were gone on their trips, out of necessity, I learned to take care of the family finances, the house, and myself. After Mom was gone, I began taking care of Sienna as well. After Mom died, a fragile routine slowly emerged as Sienna and I began building a new relationship. Before Mom's accident, we'd been leading pretty separate lives. After she hit puberty, Sienna didn't want to have anything to do with me. After I hit puberty, I didn't like her all that much either. So we struggled at first to find ways to help each other and love each other, now that we were on our own. We seldom talked directly about what happened to Mom. We both loved her in our own way and could make each other smile by sharing remembrances of her. But neither of us wanted to talk or think about how she died. If it came up at all in our conversations, we referred to it as when Mom stopped coming home. Pretty conspicuous, I suppose, but it hurt less that way. I suspected that Sienna secretly feared I would stop coming home without warning too. I could tell when that fear was close to the surface by the way her eyes anxiously followed me around the house. When I could see her becoming fearful or uncertain, I would speak soothingly to her, talking about our shared memories of our mom, of the happy times we spent with her, and how much we loved her. Often I wanted to reach for her, just to hug her and comfort her. But for whatever reason, hugging hadn't been part of our household norms growing up. Even after Mom died, Sienna would still visibly flinch if she saw me reaching for her. So we'd sit on either ends of the couch, or across the kitchen table, talking awkwardly, slowly getting to know each other beyond just being siblings. More than worrying about me leaving her, Sienna's biggest fear was that we'd run out of money and wind up on the streets. In addition to being a frustrated playwright, Mom had been an abstract painter of some note in the Syracuse art community and used to sell a few paintings a year for good-sized commissions. Whenever one sold, it was a time of joy for us. When she stopped coming home, we lost that part of our household income. Sienna's heightened fear about money was at least partly my fault. The night before she unexpectedly left the house without notice, I'd been fretting over bills. I could feel her anxiety as she watched me, as there were more bills than what I'd expected that month. We were still okay, but I didn't take the time to explain that to her. I thought I was protecting her. As for me, my greatest fear after Mom's death was of the nightmares that came to me in the darkness of my bedroom. They didn't always start the same way, but they all ended the same. I would see Mom picking up her car keys and putting on a jacket. She would come to me and give me a hug and a kiss on the cheek. Then I'd begin to weep as she asked me if she should stay home. She'd ask me if I really loved her. She'd ask me if I really loved her. Why was I letting her leave? And I would say nothing. I'd open my mouth, but nothing would come out. I'd just sob uncontrollably until Mom finally turned and walked out the door, at which point I'd wake up, drenched in sweat, shivering in the dark. When Sienna left the house without a warning or a note, I assumed it was related to the bills she'd left opened on my desk. But even if I guessed right, I had no idea where to go looking for her. It was too soon to call the cops. It was as I waited miserably for her to return that I realized with a start that it was Mom's birthday. The thought of losing Sienna after losing Mom, of being completely alone in the world without her, was physically painful. Waiting for her to come home was the longest 5 hours I'd ever spent. Sitting alone in our silent little house, I eventually heard footsteps approaching the front door. I peered into the darkness outside and could make out 2 people nearing. I stepped back from the window to keep them from catching me peeping. As they drew close, I could see it was Sienna, walking with a man I hadn't seen before. As they came up the steps, he put his arm around her waist. I could see her flinch slightly when she felt it, and my heart began accelerating in preparation for beating him to death with my bare hands. When I heard her keys jangle, I moved to stand behind the front door. I could hear them talking. "Really, it's not necessary," the man said soothingly. I tensed even more as I waited to hear Sienna's tone of voice in her reply. I relaxed slightly as she replied, seemingly calm. "It'll only take a minute. The place is just a complete mess right now." Her key slid into the lock and she stepped inside, pushing the door closed behind her. She gave a little start when I was revealed lurking behind the closing door. She put a finger to her lips to stop me from speaking, to delay my asking what was going on. When she took off her coat to hang it in the closet, I noticed what she was wearing. A fairly low-cut blouse and lightweight skirt, which together showed off her ample chest and long legs. She was wearing that in Syracuse in winter? She motioned for me to follow her into the kitchen. Then she rounded on me with a serious look on her face. It was the look she gave whenever she adopted her older-than-you sibling role. I wasn't buying into that at the moment. Her lips had a bluish tint from the cold. "Where have you been? And who the hell is that guy on the porch?" I demanded. She crossed her arms over her chest, but still replied calmly. "I didn't know I needed a pass from you to leave the house." "Damn it, you don't and you know it. But you could have left a note or something. If I disappeared on you like that, you'd be flipping out too. And it's Mom's birthday, for God's sake." She shrugged, feigning indifference. "It's no big deal. I just realized I hadn't been out on a date since forever." "Who is that guy out there?" I repeated. "He's just someone I met," she said evasively. "Where'd you meet him?" "Downtown." Now there was no eye contact. "We're downtown." "None of your business." "He's a nice guy?" "We're downtown." I repeated. She glared at me defiantly before answering. "Fine, if you must know, it was in a cafe called the Night Owl. It was a perfectly safe place." "And he's a nice guy?" she repeated defensively. My eyes must have bugged out of my head. The Night Owl was a well-known hangout on First Avenue, an area that was known as a place for various criminal activities, including trade. "Are you out of your mind?" I hissed. Then I clamped a hand over my mouth, horrified at what I'd said. She looked stunned for a moment, but then quickly looked even more determined. I had used a forbidden phrase. We both knew what had taken our mother from us. Her face turned light pink as she made a visible effort to remain calm. I invited him here. He's a nice guy, she repeated defiantly. She uncrossed her arms and put her hands on her hips. So, you need to make yourself scarce. I want to spend time alone with him, and I don't want you interrogating him. She paused before saying pointedly, we could have gone to his place, you know. I gasped at the implied threat. We hadn't argued like this since our mom's death, but I still pressed on. It was my turn to cross my arms. Well, I'm not leaving. I'm not asking you to leave the house, Martin, she replied in exasperation. I just want you to go upstairs while he's here. I didn't like it. I didn't like it one little bit. She recrossed her arms, waiting for my next challenge. Fine, I said eventually, but I'll be listening up there. You just yell, and I'll be down in a second. I'll be fine, she said, beginning to calm down. She stepped forward and almost hugged me before stepping back as she always did, nervously smoothing her hair with her fingers. I know you're just looking out for me. I sighed. I'll always look out for you, sis, you know that. I love you. She smiled in surprise, then in affection. I know you do, Martin. I love you too. She walked with me to the stairs, and I heard the sound of a soft kiss in the air near my cheek. She watched me all the way up. Instead of going to my room, I turned off the light at the top of the stairs and sat on the floor. I scooted far enough back from the top step that I couldn't be seen from below, while still being able to peek over the stairs. I could see into the living room below through the posts of the banister, and I discovered long ago that if I stayed low in the darkness, I couldn't be seen from below. I watched as Sienna went to the door and let in her visitor. Sorry, that took longer than I expected, she said, and I could swear that she glanced reproachfully at the stairs. She obviously knew I would be watching. It's okay, really. You have a lovely home. His voice was smooth and syrupy, like the wolf talking to Goldilocks. Would you like something to drink? She asked. I heard a faint tremor in her voice that I didn't like. No, thank you. I don't want to be an imposition. I just want this night to be special for both of us. My breath hitched. What did that mean? Well, if you don't mind, I think I'd like a glass of wine. In that case, maybe a small glass for me too, if you don't mind? They passed beneath my hiding place on the way from the living room to the kitchen. I didn't get a real good look at the guy, but he looked pretty old, 40 maybe? I could hear the squeaky hinge of the cupboard door over the refrigerator. That cupboard had always been the liquor cabinet, since it was the hardest place in the kitchen for kids to get into. May I open that for you? Her guest offered. I hoped they would go back to the living room soon. I couldn't see into the kitchen. I heard Sienna's murmured assent, and a few moments later I could hear the sound of wine being poured into glasses. What should we drink to? The man asked. Silence. Well, here's to new friends, the man said, followed by the gentle clink of glasses. A few moments later, they came out of the kitchen, the man walking slightly ahead, holding Sienna's right hand while she held a full glass of wine close to her chest with her left. He guided her to the couch facing the window, waited for her to sit, and then took a seat beside her. Sienna took a long sip of her wine and wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. She leaned forward to place the glass on the coffee table. Her hand trembled slightly, causing the glass to rattle before settling firmly against the surface. Just relax, the man said in a calm voice. You're safe here. She gave a quiet nod, not saying a word. Have you lived here long? He asked. A long silence ensued. Eventually, when I began to think she wasn't going to reply, as long as I can remember. Oh, grew up here? She nodded again. That's nice. It seems wherever I go, everyone's from somewhere else. It must be nice to have real roots to fall back on. I suppose. It's true. My dad was in the military, and we used to move every couple years. Tough to make friends that way, he concluded a bit wistfully. Sienna flipped her hair nervously. Easier to leave things behind. Things. Like, if people think you're different, you don't have to stay around them, the man said gently. You can leave them behind and start over somewhere new. I cringed. Was she talking about Mom? Or me? Surely, she knew I loved her. At least now, didn't she? The man smiled softly. You don't even have to move to start over. You just make the decision and don't look back. Even if it's family? Sienna asked in a low voice. Maybe she thought I couldn't hear her, but I could. Why would she say that? Somebody once said that family are the people who have to take you in when you show up. But the truth is, you can create your own family if you need to. That sounds nice. I tried to keep listening, though I struggled to fight back tears. Was she talking about moving on from Mom's death? Or had I hurt her somehow? They sat quietly for a while. Then, the man gently took one of Sienna's hands in his. May I? He started to ask. After a moment, she shook her head. No. Is that all right? Her voice trembled slightly. Of course, he said kindly. Thank you. He turned her gently, so they were face to face. They held each other's gaze for a long, quiet moment. Sienna closed her eyes, her chest rising with a deep, ragged breath. Her head tilted slightly, and he rested his forehead against hers. I could sense the weight of emotion between them. Sienna looked exhausted, drained. She wasn't herself. Her body language had shifted, as though she were surrendering to something she didn't quite understand. Her hand brushed his shoulder, her movements uncertain. He responded with gentleness, brushing a tear from her cheek. "I'm not sure how to move forward," she said faintly. "I'll help you," he answered, "but only if that's what you want. I just want things to feel okay again." He nodded. One step at a time. They sat for a while longer. No more words. Just stillness. Eventually, he stood, adjusting his coat. Before he left, he placed an envelope gently on the coffee table. "Thank you," he said quietly. Then he walked out without another word. I sat frozen, unable to move. Sienna rose on unsteady legs. She picked up her things and held them tightly against her chest. With quiet resolve, she picked up the envelope and came up the stairs. She found me where she expected, sitting there, overwhelmed. Wordlessly, she handed the envelope to me. Her expression was a mix of sorrow and determination. I couldn't look away. "Don't blame yourself, Martin," she said. "I did it for us." "For us?" I asked, stunned. "Yes, so you don't have to worry about the bills anymore. So we can stay together." I stared at her, hollow. She turned toward her bedroom, pausing at the door. "I'm sorry if I've hurt you, Martin. But I love you." Then she closed the door behind her. I opened the envelope. Inside were 20 crisp $100 bills. The nausea hit fast. I barely made it to the bathroom before collapsing, overwhelmed by everything. I lay there for what felt like hours, crying, shaking, empty, until, finally, sleep came and took the rest of the day away. When I awoke again in Nurse Connor's hospital room, there was a woman seated beside my bed. I'd been positioned on my side this time, so I could see her without moving. She was wearing a doctor's white jacket and was writing in a spiral notebook. Her name tag read Dr. Page. She seemed to be shaking her head as she wrote, her lips pursed in thought. After it appeared she'd finished her writing, she glanced up at me. She did a double take when she saw my eyes were open and gave me a pleased smile. "Well, hello there. It's nice to see you're awake." Before continuing, she reached over to grasp and push a button that was on the end of a cord lying next to my hand. "I'm Dr. Page. How are you feeling, Martin?" I realized sourly that most of my conversations would begin with that question for a while, but that wasn't her fault. "Dopey," I replied truthfully. Dr. Page nodded understandingly with pursed lips. Before she could reply, Nurse Darla came into the room. "Well, hello there, Martin," she said cheerfully. I can usually tell when someone's faking it, and she wasn't. She truly was glad to see me awake. I did my best to smile back at her. "Hi, Miss Connor." I was pleasantly surprised at the energy in my voice. At least I didn't sound like death warmed over like the last time I saw her. "Call me Darla, Martin. You gave us quite a scare. How's our patient?" she asked Dr. Page. "We were just starting to get acquainted," the doctor replied. "I just wanted you to know he was awake again so you could stop worrying about him so much," she said in a teasing tone of voice. Darla gave the doctor a reproachful look. "I worry about all my patients, Dr. Page. Although I do give the cute ones a little extra TLC. I don't feel real cute right now," I commented slowly. "Huh, you really are feeling better," Darla exclaimed. "Let me take care of something, and I'll be right back." Before she left, she leaned down a bit and said in a stage whisper, "Do you remember me yet?" I looked at her in mild surprise. But now that she mentioned it, she grinned at me on her way out the door. "Have you met Darla before?" asked Dr. Page. "She does look familiar. I can't place where I know her from, though. I'm sure it'll come to you. Now then, have you had your bed raised to a sitting position yet? It might be more comfortable for you while we chat." "Not yet, no. Why don't we try it when Darla gets back, if she'll let us? She seems to be pretty protective of you." Dr. Page then took on a sly expression. "Let's just test that theory for fun, shall we?" She came to the side of the bed where Darla had been standing and bent over slightly, reaching under the side of the bed, her back to the door. "Give me a wink when she comes through the door," she said impishly. A few moments later, Darla came in, and I gave Dr. Page the signal. "I've never worked one of these new beds before, but I'm sure I can figure it out by trial and error," she said casually. "Don't touch that," Darla exclaimed in alarm. She rushed over and actually grabbed the doctor's wrist. Then she noticed that both of us were grinning at her. "What?" she asked guardedly. "Oh, nothing," Dr. Page replied, sounding just a little smug, "just testing out a theory." I marveled at the doctor's ability to read people so quickly. "Whatever," the nurse said dismissively. "Just don't go adjusting his bed unless I'm here." Got it, got it," she replied reassuringly, not objecting at all to the nurse telling the doctor what to do. "Do you think it would be safe to raise Martin's bed to a sitting position?" Darla considered the question carefully. "All right, but I'll do it." "Of course," the doctor replied graciously. "And you?" she said, turning to me. She put her hands on her hips in mock dismay. "You still don't remember me?" I shook my head. "Fine. I guess I'll have to tell you. Reaching for the controls, she began slowly raising the head of my bed, watching me closely for any sign of pain. You were in a few classes with me at NSCC. You know, the school where the math professors treat you like some kind of math rock star? That clicked her into place for me. Oh yeah? I remember you now. And you've already graduated? I saw Dr. Page's eyebrows rise a little, and she gave me a small smile. She began writing in her notebook again, looking back and forth from Darla and me, to her busy pen, and back again. They have an 18-month nursing program at NSCC to be a licensed practical nurse, she explained. You can do most of what an RN can do. No surgical assists or things like that. But it was pretty much all I could afford on my own. Now that I have this job, the hospital's paying for my RN classes at night. There's a shortage of RNs these days, so I should have a lot of options when I finish. Dr. Page and I couldn't help but smile as she talked about her job and career plans. Her enthusiasm was infectious. Before I could say it, Dr. Page told me what I'd been about to ask. Your sister is fine, Martin. In fact, she'll be staying with Officer McConnell's family until you're ready to leave the hospital. Mr. McConnell sure seems like a nice guy. I'm confident he'll make sure she's safe. Sound okay? As the relief washed over me, all the wind seemed to drain out of my lungs. I sagged towards Darla, nearly turning onto my stomach before she gently grasped my shoulder and helped me settle carefully onto my side again. Thank you, I said simply. Is there anyone besides your sister that we should contact about where you are? Asked Dr. Page. No, not really. Wait. I go to school at NSCC. Could you tell them? And I guess I should tell the library I work there part-time at night. I can take care of that for you. Martin, no problem, said Nurse Darla. If you don't mind, I'd like to do it for him, Dr. Page interjected. Darla looked mildly surprised at a doctor volunteering for administrative tasks, but she shrugged her shoulders and nodded. Dr. Page looked like she was carefully considering something. When it looked like she'd made a decision, how about your dad, Martin? Should I try to let him know too? My throat tightened enough to nearly choke me. Darla looked up in alarm as the pace of the heart monitor's beeps accelerated sharply. I'm sorry, Martin. I didn't mean to upset you, Dr. Page said calmly, while Darla gave her an accusatory glare. Forget I mentioned it. You look like you're coming along fine, Martin, she said as she stood, completely ignoring my flare of emotions. You're going to feel doped up and sleepy for a while longer. That's nothing to worry about. They want to keep you quiet after your surgery so you'll heal up faster. At that, Darla looked at me sternly. Her expression clearly said, see? I told you so. Dr. Page glanced at Darla before turning back to me. If you don't mind, I'll be back about this time tomorrow to see how you're doing. Would that be all right, Martin? Well, sure. There had been so many doctors in and out of my room that they were beginning to blur together in my memory. Could I talk to you for a minute? Dr. Page asked Darla. I've got a couple questions about Martin's chart. Darla nodded agreeably. Dr. Page said goodbye, and they went out into the hallway. I could hear them speaking softly, but couldn't make out the words. What I could hear was the soft buzzing of the fluorescent lighting and the eternally annoying heart monitor's incessant beeping. I was trying to catalog other sounds around me, fighting to stay awake until Darla returned. It seemed like she was gone for quite a while. I was nearly out when she came back through the door. She didn't seem as perky as she had been when she left, but as she saw me looking at her, she gave me a soft smile. She walked to me and reached over to fluff up the pillow under my head. When she didn't speak, I began to worry. Am I going to be all right? She smiled reassuringly. Yes, Martin, you're going to be fine. I could tell earlier that she had been sincerely happy to see me awake. I could see now that there were things hidden behind this new kind of smile. I was losing the battle for consciousness. I looked into her pretty hazel eyes while I drifted off, and lazily hoped that whatever was lurking behind her smile wouldn't kill me. As promised, Dr. Page was back to see me the next day, just in time to see Darla taking away my lunch tray. I thought I saw a look of apprehension from Darla, but it was fleeting. I could have been mistaken. It's good to see your appetite is okay, Martin, the doctor said when she saw the empty plates. Yeah, I'm feeling a little better, I replied. They've cut back a little on his medication, too, Nurse Connor offered. I'm glad to hear that. So, are you feeling well enough to talk to me about some things? Sure. What kind of things? Well, she began, moving to the foot of my bed. Whenever someone has a head injury like you've had, we like to do some assessments. We just want to be sure there aren't any lingering effects before you leave the hospital. A lot of it'll just be conversation. I'll ask you about things in your past, how you came to be at the hospital, that kind of stuff. A lot of it will be just checking out your memory and clarity of thinking. Oh, well sure, I guess that's okay. Good. It shouldn't take too long. But Martin, she said cautiously, we may talk about things that could be painful for you. Like, when I was here yesterday. Darla looked sharply at her, unconsciously taking on a protective posture between the doctor and me. Her eyes darted to the heart monitor, but this time the beeping remained constant. It's all right. I said, trying to reassure Darla more than respond to the doctor. I know you didn't mean to, but you kind of snuck up on me yesterday. I paused and looked out the window. Some things you just try to put out of your mind, you know? It doesn't do any good to think about it. When you brought up my dad, it was kind of a jolt. Anyway, I've never even met him, so there's no point trying to get him to come and see me. I'm very sorry, Martin. She went to the bedside opposite Darla and pulled up a chair. Now, don't worry if you can't remember everything perfectly, okay? She said earnestly. Nobody can do that. So don't think there's something wrong if you have to say, I don't remember, or I'm not sure. It's okay. Okay, I said cautiously. Not knowing what she was going to ask made me nervous. I did my best to push the irrational fear away. We'll start with something recent, and then we'll go back from there. I nodded. Do you remember how you came to the hospital? She began, pen poised over her notebook. No. The first thing I remember was waking up and seeing a dozen doctors staring at me. Dr. Page looked over my bed to Darla with a raised eyebrow. The nurse smiled. He's talking about morning rounds. I think they found him. Interesting. I see, Dr. Page said with a small smile. All right, she continued. Then what's the last thing you remember before you woke up in the hospital? Hey, that's supposed to be my line, protested Officer Kevin McConnell as he came in the door. He was wearing blue jeans and a University of South Carolina sweatshirt instead of his police uniform. Good morning, Dr. Page said cordially as she rose to shake his hand. I'm the cop assigned to Martin's assault case, Kevin replied, gesturing apologetically to his casual clothing. I remember, Dr. Page assured him. Darla let me know you plan to be here now, so I thought it might be easiest on Martin to combine our interview time with him. That's fine. Is Sienna here? I interrupted. Sorry, Martin, Kevin replied with a glance at Dr. Page. My wife was called into work this morning, so your sister's watching our kids for us. But I'll bring her over this afternoon. All right then, Dr. Page said briskly, let's get to it. The cop nodded and also became all business, pulling a small notepad from a back pocket. All right, Martin, he said soberly. Tell us what happened. I took a deep breath. I was looking for my sister. It's been pretty tough for both of us since our mom died. But Mom and Sienna were really close, like best friends. Sienna's acted frightened, I guess would be the best word for it, ever since the accident. Is she afraid of anything in particular? Dr. Page asked gently. I shook my head, trying to come up with a good description. I think mainly she's afraid of being alone, with no place to go. So she's afraid when I leave the house that I won't come back. You know, like Mom did. And she worries that without Mom we'll run out of money. That's understandable, Dr. Page observed. Some people deal with something as traumatic as losing a parent in ways that you can see. Some internalize their reactions. When she stopped speaking, I could feel 3 pairs of eyes examining me closely. Dr. Page in particular was looking at me like a bug under a microscope. Hey, I'm all right, I protested. Dr. Page shrugged. Sorry, Martin, you're the one in the hospital, after all. But let's get back to what happened the night you were injured. It's more your short-term memory we want to take for a test drive. Okay, well, a month ago we were a little low on money, and it was Mom's birthday. Sienna got pretty emotional about it. She left the house without telling me where she was going, and that really freaked me out. She'd never done that before. This is still too far back. Martin, Dr. Page interrupted. I need you to talk about how you were hurt before you were brought to the hospital. It's kind of related. Oh, sorry, please continue. I couldn't tell the 3 of them everything about what happened that awful night. That would have to be Sienna's decision, not mine. She said she went downtown, and to the rough part of downtown. That scared me even more than her not leaving a note. She could have gotten hurt. But she just laughed and said the edgy atmosphere down there helped her to not think about Mom. It did seem to have cheered her up the next few days, but it nearly gave me a heart attack. I paused to see if they were buying my sanitized version of that night. It seemed like they did, though the cop's face was impossible to read. Job requirement, I thought. I took a deep breath and continued. 4 days ago was a year since Mom died. I had to pause to compose myself. I hadn't realized that, Kevin commented softly. I offered to stay home from school with Sienna, so she wouldn't have to be alone, thinking about it all day. But she convinced me she was all right. I sighed again. But when I got home, she was gone, just like a month ago. No note, no nothing. There was no way I was going to sit at home like the last time, hoping she'd come home safe and sound. No way, I said grimly. That's why you went downtown. To look for Sienna? Asked Dr. Page. Yeah, I must have walked 100 miles that night, looking for her in every tavern, every nightclub, and every restaurant. It wasn't easy to get into the taverns or the nightclubs, since I'm not 21. But when I told them I just wanted to look around for my sister for a minute and then leave, they'd let me in. But I couldn't find her anywhere. Eventually, it was fully dark outside, which made it even harder. But then, I finally saw her. She was pretty far off, but she was under a streetlight. I recognized her hair and her jacket, and I could see what door she was going into. So I ran like crazy down there. When I'd passed by it before, the building hadn't looked like a club. There was no sign or anything, just a door set in the bottom floor of what looked like a 5-story office building. But when I got to the door this time, there was a big guy standing outside in front of it. So I did the same thing I'd been doing all night. Said I just wanted to look around for my sister for a minute. But he wasn't buying it. He said it was a by invitation only bar, and I clearly wasn't invited. So I asked if he would look for her for me. I got a picture of Sienna out of my wallet so he'd know what she looked like. He looked at the picture without touching it, shook his head, and said, "She ain't here." I told him I saw her going in just a couple minutes earlier, and he said bullshit and to get out of his face. I was pretty tired and frustrated by then, and I kind of lost it. I told him I'd call the cops and tell them I'd seen my underage sister go into his place if he wouldn't let me look for her. He looked pretty pissed off, so I told him again I only wanted to look around for a minute. Finally, he opened the door and followed me inside. As I walked in, I saw a set of closed double doors in the wall facing us, and I could hear music coming from the other side. When I turned around, there were 2 more big guys getting up from their chairs by the door, so there were 3 big guys standing between me and the way out. Officer McConnell asked, "Think you could find this place again?" "Yeah, I think I could." Dr. Page spared an inscrutable glance at the cop before turning back to me. "Can you remember what happened next?" One of the inside guys asked, "Why do we got here?" The guy from outside said, "This little scumsucker says he's going to call the cops on us for having his underage sister inside." "Oh, really?" "Really, sir," I said, trying to switch back to being polite so I could get out of there alive. "It would just take a second." The guy looked at me like I was something smelly he'd stepped in. "Kid, we get people snooping around here all the time. Newspaper reporters, or people like you that work for those a-holes, who would love to get in and look around for a minute. They'd like to see if there's anybody famous inside, or somebody in politics. So then they can write a story about what you saw, and that would put us out of business. Our customers want their privacy, and they'd stop coming in a heartbeat if we let that happen." He stooped down to look me squarely in the eye. "You ain't getting inside. Your sister ain't here. Now piss off." I stopped telling my story for a moment to catch my breath. Darla handed me a cup of water to help my sore throat. To my surprise, she then picked up one of my hands in hers, as if already comforting me for the pain I was about to describe. I should have just gone outside and waited for Sienna to come out, but I was worried about what she might be doing in there, or what someone could be doing to her. So I did something really stupid. Someone opened up the double doors behind me, and as a blast of music came out, I jumped for the open door. "Oh, geez, Martin," McConnell exclaimed. I could only nod in agreement. One of them grabbed at me and caught my jacket, and I tried to shrug my arms out of it. But I think I hit the guy in the face with my elbow. The cop sucked in air through his teeth. "So, then what happened?" Dr. Page asked urgently. I squeezed Darla's hand. "I woke up here." "You're lucky you weren't beat up worse, kid," Officer McConnell said, shaking his head. "You're probably right," I agreed solemnly. Dr. Page looked down at her notepad. "Martin, I think I can understand why Sienna would do what you describe. It's a slightly unusual self-destructive behavior, but that's what we often see happen with people that are coping with the loss of a loved one. It's called survivor's guilt. They wonder why they deserve to still be alive when someone they loved so much is dead. When they can't consciously resolve that question for themselves, they subconsciously try to balance the scales by hurting themselves." Something dawned on me. "What kind of doctor are you?" Dr. Page looked surprised. "I'm sorry. I thought you knew, Martin. I'm a psychiatrist." "Well, that's good," I said slowly. "You could talk to Sienna about her side of it when she comes to see me." "I'll be glad to, Martin. Have you talked to her much about her feelings after your mom's death?" "Some, but we don't like to talk about it too much. I guess we just need more time." "That could be," she agreed. "Do you remember how she took the news when she learned of your mother's accident?" I tried to recall. "Not specifically, no," I said, a little frustrated with myself. "Don't feel bad about it, Martin. You were dealing with your own emotions at the time. But how she reacted could tell me a lot about how to help her," Dr. Page said thoughtfully. "Are you sure you can't remember?" "I'm sorry, but I can't," I replied somewhat testily. "I thought it was my short-term memory we were supposed to be checking." "You're asking me about what happened when my mom died a year ago. I think your memory is fine, Martin." "Oh, well, that's good, right?" She nodded, and then studied her pad again before raising her eyes to me. "Martin, would you be willing to go under hypnosis?" I blinked in surprise. "What for?" "To see if there are any details in your subconscious memory about that night that might help me to help Sienna. Understanding the trauma that caused the problem for a patient can be pretty difficult for a psychiatrist. Sometimes it can take years of therapy to get a patient to accept what happened and move on. If I can learn what the triggers were, I could save her years of recovery time." I only hesitated for a moment. "Of course, I'll do anything to help my sister." Dr. Page smiled warmly. "I was pretty sure you would, Martin." I could hear Dr. Page very clearly. In fact, it was something way beyond clear. It was as if I was hyper-concentrating on her voice. It became my sole focus. My eyes were closed, but I could visualize the movements of her lips as she spoke. I felt the depth of her breathing. I could sense the gestures of her hands. And I couldn't hear anything else. Martin, we're going to talk now about the night your mother died, and about how it affected your sister, Sienna. I knew immediately that nothing I heard the voice say could possibly be more reasonable or as important. Let's start with what was the weather like that night. It was stormy. It wasn't cold enough to snow, but it was raining really hard. Were you and your sister home when your mom drove away from the house? Yes. Did you and your sister talk to your mom before she left? No, just me. What did you talk about? The voice was asking an important question, but it was my nightmare. Martin? Yes? I know this is hard, Martin. What did you and your mother talk about before she left the house? We talked about Sienna. That's good, Martin. You're doing very well. Now, tell me everything you can remember about that talk with your mom. She asked me to be Sienna's friend. She knew that we didn't get along very well. She said that someday. My voice had dried up again. Martin? Martin? It's all right, Martin. You're safe. You can tell me. What did she say? She said that someday, we'd be on our own. And that when that happened, we'd have to love each other and take care of each other. Good, Martin, very good. Did she say anything else? She asked me to promise, to always take care of Sienna, to make sure she was safe. Good, Martin. What happened next? I promised. It seemed like a long time before the voice spoke again. I see, Martin. I see. Then what happened? I felt myself begin to shiver, as if I'd just stepped into a walk-in freezer. I couldn't answer that question. The voice could go to hell. I knew if I answered that question, I would die. No. Martin, you're safe now. Nothing can hurt you now. Tell me what happened next. No. Martin, whatever happened wasn't your fault. I need you to answer me, so I can help your sister. I couldn't stop shaking, but I'd do anything for my sister. And Mom hugged me, for a long time. Thank you, Martin. Thank you. You're doing very well. And then she put on her coat, picked up her car keys, and, yes? Asked the voice. I let her leave. I was wrung out. I'd emptied my soul. Martin? Oh God. The voice hadn't stopped. Martin? Yes. In my mind, I was watching Mom opening the door, turning to me, looking into my eyes for the last time. Martin, why did you say you let her leave? I should have stopped her, I said simply. As she was leaving. Did you know that she wasn't going to come back? I should have. But did you? I let her go. She died. Martin, did you know she was going to die when she left the house? No. Then you had no reason to stop her from leaving. Did you? My mind was locking up. It didn't want to let anything hurtful get inside me. The voice was making my body shake itself apart. I couldn't let it in any farther. Martin? Go away, go away, go away, go away, go away. All right, Martin. Relax again. I'd like to talk about your sister now. Oh God. I know this is painful, Martin. We need to talk just a little bit longer. We need to talk about your sister. Can you do that for me? Why, yes. Good. Now, how did you learn about the accident? Phone call. Who called? The police. What did they say? They said there'd been an accident. Did they say anything else? They said we should go to the hospital. They said that's where Mom was. And you answered the phone? Yes. So, you were the one that had to tell your sister about the accident? Yes. Where was she? She was. I don't remember. What did that matter anyway? Did she see your mom leave? No. So, where was she? I strained, trying to dig up this pointless detail from my memory for the voice. It was slowly beginning to take shape. I think she was hiding in her bedroom again. Hiding? Why do you say she was hiding, Martin? She does that whenever we have a fight. I see. You had a fight with your sister that night. Go away, God damn it, go away. Martin? Yes. Martin? Yes. You had a fight with your sister? Yes. Before your mom left? Yes. What did you fight about? I strained again. It was about the guy she'd just started dating. Tell me everything you can remember about the argument. I knew the guy back in high school. He's a sick creep. He always goes after girls who are, well, innocent. Innocent how, Martin? He targets girls who are naive, who don't see people like him coming. That's the only reason he was interested in Sienna. And you told Sienna that? That the only reason he was dating her was because he thought she was easy to manipulate? Yes. I see. How did she feel about him? She thought she was in love with him. So, it must have been a pretty big argument. I was protecting her. Yes, of course you were, Martin. The voice was still for a while. Martin, tell me what happened with Sienna after the hospital called about your mom being in the hospital. I went to her room and told her. I see. Was her bedroom door open or closed when you got there? What? I strained again. I think it was open. Good, Martin, good. Did she usually leave her door open after the two of you had an argument? No. That's all right, Martin. I'm trying to understand your sister's state of mind. What was she doing when you came into her room? I'm not sure, I said in frustration. I was frustrated with my memory and frustrated at being asked to remember things of no consequence. Try again, Martin. Try to remember. I tried. I couldn't. The gentle monotone of the voice was getting louder, as if trying to force its way into my head. Martin, maybe she was somewhere else when you went to her bedroom to tell her about your mom. So you told her somewhere else. I guess so. Was there anywhere else your sister would go when you quarreled? When she was upset? The voice finished the question with a surprising crescendo, but it had to in order to be heard over a new competing noise. It was also rising in volume, but was much higher pitched and seemed to be filling the entire world. With a start, I realized it was coming from me. I was screaming. My mind was turning on itself, destroying itself, killing itself. I don't remember if my answer to the voice's question came before, during, or after my scream of agony. Sometimes when she wanted to be left alone. Sienna hid in the back of Mom's car. Martin, go away. Martin, wake up. Dr. Pages and Officer McConnell aren't here. It's just me, Darla. Get the hell away from me. Martin, can you hear your heart monitor? So what? Can you hear how fast it's going? I kept my eyes tightly closed, but I grudgingly tried to tune into it. The beeps were so close together, the monitor sounded more like a siren than a string of discrete sounds. They gave you a sedative, and it slowed down for a while before it shot up again. So they gave you another kind of sedative, and the same thing's happening. They're going to come back and give you some more narcotics pretty soon. So what? Please try to calm down, Martin. I saw you do it before. I'm worried they're going to keep trying things that won't work until your heart is damaged or your brain is. Please, Martin. I felt her hand land gently on my shoulder. I nearly lashed out her, and I'm sure she felt the violent contraction. But my hands remained by my sides, and I realized my wrists were tied to the rails of my bed. So what? I said again. She only rubbed my shoulder by way of an answer. I slowly opened my eyes. She was hovering over me, her face anxious, eyes locked on mine. You knew, didn't you? I said accusingly. You knew, and you didn't tell me. She averted her eyes for a moment. We didn't know until Officer McConnell came to see you, Martin. He knew what happened a year ago. So when I told him you wanted his help to contact your sister, he knew, and then we knew. Something was seriously wrong. She's dead, isn't she? I asked miserably. Her eyes sad. She nodded. I'm so sorry, Martin. She looked at the heart monitor again, and I could see her heave a sigh of relief. The siren was steadily becoming slower, sounding again like an annoying flow of discrete beeps. Thank God, she breathed. I was surprised at the apparent depth of her feelings. Darla, why didn't you tell me? We told the doctors here, and they arranged to have Dr. Page come see you. She told us not to confront you with news of your sisters. She looked like she was searching for the right words to say. She pursed her lips and shook her head. Dr. Page was worried you couldn't stand the shock. She wanted to wait at least another day, so you'd be physically stronger. And she wanted to learn as much as she could about your situation before telling you. She said if we just told you straight out, it was almost certain we'd never know for sure how this had happened to you, which meant you might never fully recover. We both looked up as Dr. Page came through the door. Hi, she said with a smile, heading for the bedside chair opposite Darla. I looked at her guardedly. Her ability to steer my mind wherever she wanted it to go made me instinctively distrust her. How are you feeling, Martin? I stared back at her defiantly, my teeth tightly clenched. The doctor looked a question at Darla. His heart rate was off the charts, 2 separate times, she reported. You can see the medications they gave him on his chart. They only brought it down for a half hour or so before it spiked up again. Then it started going up for a 3rd time, but he woke up and it dropped back down on its own. Dr. Page smiled softly. All by itself, eh? She looked at me with a raised eyebrow. I'm sure it was just a coincidence that you calmed down when you woke up and saw Nurse Darla watching over you. My defensive barriers cracked, just a little. Maybe, I conceded. Darla tried to look impassive, but I might have seen a smile in her eyes. Bless your heart, Dr. Page said to Darla, as she settled into her chair, bringing out her notebook to scan again. She seemed to be gathering herself before jumping back into my screwed-up head. She nodded to herself before looking up into my wary eyes. Martin, I suspect you may resent me for what I've put you through today. If I were in your shoes, I'd feel the same way, and I truly am sorry for that. But please believe me, if I knew of another way that would have been better or easier on you, I would have used it. We couldn't just tell you what had happened, Martin. We had to help you see it in your own mind. She paused and shook her head. Anytime a loved one commits suicide, the people that love them the most pay the highest price. You would be less than human if you didn't regret not stopping your mom. But you had no way of knowing what she would do as she was leaving. You know that now, don't you? I averted my eyes, looking out the window at the clouds. I have nightmares, where Mom stands at the door and begs me to not let her leave. I looked back to Dr. Page, and, before she left, she put my name as co-signer on all of her bank accounts before she died. She didn't put Sienna's name on them, just mine. She expected me to take care of Sienna, and I killed her instead. Martin, you did nothing of the sort, Dr. Page said flatly. There could have been any number of harmless reasons for your mother to put you on those accounts. She appeared to take a moment to compose herself. Then, I understand you're something of a natural mathematician? I hadn't seen that one coming. Yeah, I suppose so. Believe me, he is, Darla interjected. So, Martin, you could probably have answered this one when you were in kindergarten. If B follows A, does that mean that A caused B? It's more complicated than that, I said defensively. Is it? You couldn't have known what your mother would do. And you couldn't have known that having an argument with your sister would have any significant consequences either. Her eyes dropped as she thought of what to say next. She seemed startled as she noticed the restraints on my wrists for the first time. Oh, good heavens, she exclaimed. She stood up and began to untie the restraint around my left wrist. Darla took her cue from the doctor and worked on the other wrist. When they were off, Darla went to the end of my bed and pulled up my chart. She made a notation of some kind before presenting it to Dr. Page to sign. The doctor snorted in annoyance, but then scribbled what I assumed were her initials, authorizing the removal of my restraints. She turned back to me. Now, let's talk about what your mind did to protect itself, to protect you. When you realized Sienna had been in your mom's car, the shock of losing your mom and Sienna was too terrible for your mind to accept. So it created an alternative reality, one where Sienna was still living with you, both struggling to cope with your mother's death. And your mind rationalized anything that happened afterwards to be consistent with that alternate reality. I stared up at the ceiling, dazed. Could that really be what happened? It was too much to accept, to believe. It can also explain the timing of the two crises with your imaginary sister, the doctor continued, on your mom's birthday and the anniversary of her death. I can't believe this. I protested. I don't see how that would matter. Dr. Page smiled gently. The significance of those dates made preserving your vision of your living sister difficult, she said softly. Think of it as your rational mind trying to resume control. It was trying to make you realize she wasn't really alive by showing the imaginary Sienna behaving so unlike the Sienna you knew in real life. I sat immobile, trying to come to grips with it all. I was becoming too dazed to protest against the avalanche of unbelievable information. Martin, you're doing very well. Struggling to come to grips with something like this is understandable. And we're not done yet. You're kidding, I gasped. She smiled. Nope, I'm not kidding. She stood up and went to the door of the room and made a gesture. I was pleasantly surprised to see Ms. Walker, my boss at the library, come into the room, followed by a man I didn't know. Ms. Walker came to stand beside me, while the man held back at the foot of the bed. It's so good to see you, Martin. How are you feeling? Ms. Walker asked solicitously. I guess I'm an unfinished work. She chuckled. Aren't we all, Martin? Aren't we all? I'm sorry I'm missing so much work. Have you been able to get all the books refiled? I asked apologetically. Ms. Walker looked at Dr. Page, and it was she who replied. Martin, I told you that your mind filtered things to support your own reality? A lot of those were little things, and Ms. Walker agreed to come as an example. Then she nodded to Ms. Walker. Martin, Ms. Walker said hesitantly, I always enjoy seeing you at the library, and you really have helped with organizing things and filing returned books. But, when Dr. Page called to let me know you'd be missing work, I explained to her that it's a volunteer role, Martin. We haven't been paying you for your time there. I stared at her in disbelief. I looked at Dr. Page for an explanation. This is an example of how your mind found ways to explain things that were incongruent with your sister being alive. How does my library job, really being volunteer work, have anything to do with Sienna? I think there were a couple things going on, she said carefully. You were seeing deposits into your bank account that you couldn't explain. And I suspect you needed some rationalization for what Sienna would be doing every day while you were in school. Did she have a job of some kind as well? I nodded. She had, a job with a computer repair company. You see, Martin, your mind dealt with the new income by attributing it to a part-time job for you and a job for your sister too. But where has the money been coming from? Dr. Page took a deep breath and looked at the man standing at the end of my bed. He gave her a nervous smile and nodded. This will be a hard one for you to deal with, Martin. You may want to either shut down or scream at me. I really need you to listen to what I say and stay with me as I help you work through it. Can you do that for me? I'll try. Okay, Martin. She turned to look briefly at the man before turning back to me. This is your father. I was stunned, and instantly, I was incredibly angry. Hello, Martin, the man said cautiously. Get the hell out of here. He instinctively took a step backwards when I screamed at him. Martin, listen to me, please, said Dr. Page. You left us. You don't give a damn about us. I was going to keep screaming until the son of a bitch was driven out of my sight. I felt something touch my hand, and my first thought was my wrists were being put in restraints again. But instead, I saw that Darla had taken my hand in hers. I looked up into her eyes, and my next scream died on my lips. She looked at me calmly, caringly. My body was still vibrating with the aftershocks of my rage as she raised her other hand to briefly touch my cheek. Breathe, she murmured softly. I drew in a rattling breath, my windpipe not committed to the idea, but they got easier, one after the other, until in a few minutes I didn't have to consciously will my body to sustain itself. When I finally became calm enough to be coherent, Dr. Page began again. Martin, Dr. Page said softly, we've talked today about how our perceived reality can sometimes be different than what's real, right? I glared at her, which she completely ignored, waiting patiently for me to reply. Eventually, I gave her a grudging nod. Are you willing to listen to your father? To see if your perceptions and feelings about him are what they should be? I closed my eyes, trying to fight down the rage that tried to spring up and engulf me again. I heard the heart monitor begin to accelerate, and then I felt Darla's hand softly rubbing my shoulder. I willed my breathing to slow, and then focused on slowing my heart, damping down its pace as it thundered in my chest. When I'd regained a shaky control over my body, I opened my eyes to look at my father. It was something I thought I'd never do. If I was objective, I'd have to see the resemblance. I looked a lot like him. Dark hair, glasses, in good shape if not muscular. What struck me first was seeing how he was looking me squarely in the eye, not showing any sign of apology or regret. And besides the family resemblance, he somehow looked familiar. It's good to see you, Martin, he said slowly. His voice was surprisingly deep in comparison to my own. I know this has been pretty hard on you, but I understand. I'm sad we lost your mother and your sister too. I couldn't help myself. Sure you are, I said sarcastically. Martin, Dr. Page interjected, please try to listen before you judge. I just glared at her again. I truly did love your mother, Martin. When she and I divorced, it was really hard. She felt I was smothering her, keeping her from reaching for her dreams. She dreamed of being an artist, or a playwright, or any number of things. I knew that she wasn't. He stopped and gave Dr. Page a pleading look. She nodded to him before speaking. Obviously, I've never met your mom, Martin. But from what I've heard, your mother was delusional. To what degree, it's hard to say. She needed treatment, which your dad says she adamantly refused to accept voluntarily. He nodded. When we were divorced, I didn't think she was a danger to herself or you kids. But medical practice being what it was at the time, I was told if I forced her to get treatment, there was a chance she could have been committed. He sighed sadly. I tried to support her dreams. I really did. But when she wasn't successful, after a time she came to blame me. Eventually she filed for divorce, and when I finally gave up on changing her mind, I basically let her have everything. I had visitation rights to see you kids, but she made my visits traumatic. She still saw me as a threat to her dreams, and it became hurtful for you and your sister. You began crying and running away every time I came to pick you up or see you. After a year of that, and it didn't show any signs of it getting better, I finally decided it would be better for you if I stopped visiting. Then you did walk out on us. You gave up on us, I said accusingly. He gave me a tight smile. I did what I could, son. I saw every one of your baseball games. I talked to your teachers about your grades. I went to PTA meetings. Stuff like that. My God, that was why he looked so familiar. He paused and shook his head before continuing. And I made sure there was enough money so that you and your sister never lacked for anything. I snorted with disdain again. Oh, come on. We were always worrying about having enough money. If Mom hadn't sold her paintings, we'd have been in real trouble. Martin, who do you think bought her paintings? I gasped in shock. Your mother was a proud woman, Martin. She would never ask me for more money. But a few times a year, she would let me know when she had finished a painting, and the price she asked for was really the amount she needed to cover all your needs. After the accident, I increased the monthly amount I deposited into your bank account to replace what I'd provided before by buying her paintings. I closed my eyes and concentrated. $1,000 a month? I asked tentatively. Very good, Martin, Dr. Page said quietly. You've made a connection? I looked at her dazedly. Sienna was paid $1,000 a month for her computer support job. Exactly, she replied. The increase in what you received from your father every month didn't fit your alternate reality, the reality you made for yourself and your sister. And you needed something for Sienna to be doing while you were away at school. You resolved those disconnects by giving Sienna a part-time job, a job that she could do from home. That paid her $1,000 a month. I was trying desperately to take it all in, but my head was beginning to spin. I was trying to blink back the tears that began welling up in my eyes. I must be. I'm crazy, aren't I? I'm crazy like Mom. I managed to choke out. No, Martin, Dr. Page said reassuringly, you're not crazy. You went through an incredible, horrible, painful experience. You and I have a lot of work to do together, to work through everything that's happened. But I can already see you're putting the pieces together on your own. You'll get through this. I turned back to my dad. But why didn't you come to me after the accident? I did try, son. I called you many times. Mostly they would just go to your answering machine. When I did connect with you, whenever I told you who I was, you'd just hang up the phone. When I came in person, you wouldn't answer the door. On your mother's birthday, I thought it would be tough for you. So I came to see you in person again. But even though I could see you looking out the window, it was like you couldn't see me. I brought some cash for you. So eventually, I just put it by the door and left. Oh God, no. It's all right, Martin. It's okay, Dr. Page said softly. I looked up at my dad. $2,000? He nodded. Martin, we won't resolve everything for you today. What we did accomplish was for you to understand what really happened. You've taken the first steps, the most important steps. It will take some time, but you will recover. And you won't be going through it alone. Your dad will help you. I'll help you. Dr. Page flashed a small grin at Darla. And I have a feeling you'll have some other help too. Darla was still holding my hand. I gave it a soft squeeze as her cheeks turned a little rosy. She looked down at me and smiled. And I knew somehow I knew. I'd get through this. How about I let you drive on the way back? I smiled but didn't reply. I'm certain my voice would have cracked if I tried. It wasn't fall. If it were, the brilliant colors of the trees that lined the highway would have been bursting forth. But we were past that now, looking forward to spring and a fresh start. When we came to the off-ramp, I'd expected the place to be familiar. I knew I'd been there before, but I didn't remember anything about it now. We drove slowly, looking for the right turns to take. Eventually, we pulled to the side and stopped. Ready? I nodded, and we got out of the car. It was a fair distance from the road, and the frozen grass sounded like gravel as it crunched beneath our feet. When he stopped, I turned to follow his gaze. The tombstone was wider than most, as I'd expected it to be. They were together, as they had been so much in life. The family name was engraved as an overarching canopy for the two names beneath it. At the bottom was inscribed, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." Matthew 5 verse 8. As I read the words in between, Dad put his arm around my shoulders. Here lies Lydia, beloved wife and mother. Here lies Sienna, beloved daughter and sister. I cried, with no thought of trying to contain my tears. I needed to cry. When I turned to embrace my dad, I saw tears running freely down his cheeks too. We eventually released each other and wiped our eyes. I wanted them back in my life again. But surprisingly, as I looked at them at rest together, my feeling in their presence was of peace. I love them so much, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I know, son. I know, my dad said softly. And I think they know it, too. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.